back to the channel, and welcome to not only part 2 of Baxter's build, but also the final installment in my TMNT series. So watch along as I paint up Baxter's diorama. So you can see here we have all the parts for Baxter's base laid out and ready to paint. So let's stop wasting time and dive right in. I start by painting the desk a mixture of model colors yellow, blue, brown, off-white, and black. Next, I fade the paint with a simple whitewash. Okay, so it turns out that I'm not real happy with the desktop here. I feel like it's just kind of plain and boring. Now, I get it, there's going to be stuff on the desktop to sort of distract from that, but I'm just not feeling it. So tanker desks generally have sort of a fake wood laminate on them. Some of them have a steel top or a metal top that gets painted, but the majority that I saw have that kind of fake wood laminate, and I want to try and recreate that. So I'm going to need to step off camera, of course, mask the lip of the desk here, and then come back and try and recreate a wood grain. And I'm actually kind of excited about that. I've never painted wood grain before, so I'm a little nervous, but I'm also kind of excited about it. So I'm going to jump off camera real quick, get everything taped off like I said, come back, block it in, and then I'll try and paint some wood grain. I get started by painting the desktop Mecha Colors Sand. Next, I take an old ratty acid brush and drag the surface with Mecha Colors wood. Then I start adding in some thinned down model colors brown and black. Finish the wood look with Express Colors Martian Orange. Lastly, I paint the metal parts of the desk Mecha Colors Steel. Okay, so I finished blocking in the desk, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I couldn't be happier with the overall look of the desk, and I'm really happy I did end up going with the sort of wood laminate look to the desktop. And not bad for my first time painting wood grain too, I might add. So I've sealed everything in a clear coat, and it's time to move on. So what I want to do now is just add some paint chipping or some rust chipping to the model. Now, I've showed you guys in the past the chipping fluid method as well as painting them by hand, but I think for this one we're just going to go with the old school method of just using a sponge. So I've had these cheap kind of inexpensive sponges lying around for a number of years for this very reason, and I've gone ahead and torn a corner piece off. Now, one thing you do want to make sure is that the area that you're dipping into the paint is not just a clean cut. You want to make sure it has some irregularity to get a more organic chip effect. So I've gone through and just kind of picked at it to give it a tattered effect and stuff. So I'll just dip this in the paint, dab it on a paper towel and then just go around the model and add my chips. But before I do that, I do want to do a little bit of masking, mostly wherever there's a panel break. So I may want some chipping like right here on the corner of the drawer, but not necessarily in this area here. So I'll go around and just do some basic masking to prevent that from happening. So I'm gonna jump off camera, mask everything off real quick, come back, and we'll start chipping. For the paint chipping, I lightly sponge on some Model Colors brown. Then I come back and blend the chips together with some dry brushing of the same color. Then I brush on some Mecha Colors Rust Wash around the steel parts. Alright, for now at least we can consider the desk done. I do have specific plans for this thing later on in the build, but we're kind of at a stopping point. So what I want to do now is turn my attention to the items on the desk, like the computer and the lamp. So I'm going to put this thing off to the side, come back, and we'll get started. I block in the computer with Mecha Colors Gray Sand. I paint select keys with Model Air Gray. Then I start painting the plugs and vent with Mecha Colors Silver. Next, I paint the back cover with Mecha Colors Pure Black. Then I paint the screws with the same silver. Then I paint the VGA connector with Mecha Colors Blue. Now to grunge this thing up, I apply a light gray wash. I add dirt around the keyboard using Express Colors Wasteland Brown. Then dirtying up the back is as simple as adding a gray wash. To finish off the computer, I add some edge weathering with Model Colors white mixed with a lot of black. Next up, I paint the table lamp and shade with Metal Colors Copper. Then I brush on some Express Color Wasteland Brown. I wasn't completely happy with the look, so I came back and airbrushed the same color over the entire lamp. I added coffee stains to the mug by using Express Colors Willow Bark. Be nice to add a bit of dust to the desktop and lamp, so for that I sprayed on Mecha Colors Gray Sand. So now that I've finished up the table and the computer, it's time to shift our focus over to some water slide decals, which you can see here. And of course, lights. You guessed it, we're going to put some lights in this bad boy. More on that later. So you can see here I've got some computer screens and some blueprints. Of course, the blueprints go on the papers, and the computer screens, guess what? Go on the computer. So I really wanted to kind of do my own little spin or my own take on the pan-dimensional spacecraft computer from the cartoon. So I just whipped up this quick little simple design, very much inspired by the Lawnmower Man film from the 90s, but yet still kind of lives in the 80s, which is what I was going for. So that pretty much wraps up my thought process on the decals. Now I need to jump off camera, get the water set up, get the water dish set up, trim these up, let them soak a little bit, then we can get them applied. Then I'll need to let them set overnight and dry so that I can seal them in a clear coat. So I'm going to stop rambling so we can apply these decals. Okay, so I did do a little bit of prep work here, meaning I went ahead and connected all the wires just to make sure everything works before I commit to finally soldering everything up. Now for this setup, I chose to wire the lights in series. So I started by connecting the negative lead from the battery to the negative lead of the switch. Then I took the positive lead of the first light here and connected it to the positive wire for the battery. Then I took the negative wire from this first light here, and you can see I connected it to the positive wire on the second light. And then I took the negative wire from the second light and connected it to the positive wire of the switch. So if everything is wired up as it should be, when I hit the button, the lights should come on. Boom! Look at that, we have power. So now that I know that everything is working as it should, I can do the final soldering. Slide the shrink tube over to protect the connection points, and then I can finally glue everything up. Alright, so I got the desktop glued to the desk, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty over the moon with how well this has turned out. I absolutely love this desk. I think it looks really, really cool. I couldn't be happier with how it turned out. And it went together really well. Aside from having to modify the battery tray a bit to make it work with the wires, everything else went together as intended. Now, I did sort of get out of sync with my steps, and I forgot to glue the computer screen onto the computer before, of course, gluing it to the desktop. Not a big deal, we can still do that. I'll just need to lay it on its back so that we can fuss with getting it into the computer and stuff. But I do want to check and make sure that when the light is on, it's not creating a little hot spot here in the middle of the screen. The LED is pretty bright and it's pretty close to the screen, so it may create a little bit of a hot spot. No big deal, I can just take a little bit of cotton here, tear a piece off, stick it in there, and it should diffuse the light enough that it won't even be noticeable. Okay, so I've placed the screen in the computer just to see how it's going to look when we turn on the lights. So when I push the button here, you can see it does create a little bit of a hot spot right here, of course, right in the middle of his nose. So that is something I want to take care of before actually gluing the screen to the computers. So let's pry this out a little bit here with a knife. There we go. Okay, so what I can do is take a little bit of cotton here. Now, I've already torn a piece off. And just kind of pull it out so it's kind of a thin layer of cotton. We've got it kind of flat and just kind of set it down in there, and it should diffuse the light. So you can see it's a little bit of a hot spot here in the middle, but it shouldn't be as noticeable once we put the screen on. So if we drop that down in there, turn it on, you can see there, it diffuses the light, and we're good to go. So I'm going to glue this computer screen on, then I'll come back for one more look before moving on to the rest. Alright, so the screen has been glued onto the computer and is good and dry. So it's time to take one final look at this before moving on to the next part of the build. And now I know I've stated it before, but I'm really, really happy with how this has turned out. I went ahead and threw on the lampshade just to kind of see what it's going to look like. Now, I don't think I'm going to glue this on. I think I want to leave it as a separate piece, just to make it easier when I transport it or if I ever need to tack it up. So yeah, looks fantastic. and the lights still work, so that's even better. But before moving on, let's see what this looks like with the lights off. Now I do apologize, I can't turn them off all at the same time, so bear with me while I turn each one off. Dang, that looks pretty darn cool. Seriously, I like it. Now unfortunately I do see some light leaking around the edges of the monitor. It looks like I rubbed some of the ink off the decal when I was applying it to the computer screen. So that's a bit of a bummer. Something I need to keep in mind in the future if I ever try and make another one of these or use this same process for another project and stuff. But anyways, I still think it looks pretty cool. I'm really happy with how it turned out. So for now the desk is done. You can put it off to the side and move on to the rats and the base. I start by blocking in the rats with dark German Panzer Gray. Then I dry brush them with model colors off-white. Next, I paint their little fingers and ears with Game Air's Rosy Flesh. To highlight the fur, I dry brush a couple with dark German Panzer Gray mixed with some white, and for the other, I used Model Colors Red Leather. I just simply painted their eyes pure black. Okay, so we're finally down to the base, and I could not be happier. Not because I haven't enjoyed the process, I really have, but I'm just excited to be done so that I can put it all together. I think all the individual components have turned out really well, and I'm just ready to see it fully assembled. So I'm going to try and keep this paint job simple. I know I say this all the time, but I really am just going to try and do a little bit of sponge paint, maybe a wash and some dry brush, and that should be it for the base. So I'm going to hop off camera real quick, get everything set up like I always do, come back, we'll get this guy painted, then we can finally put it together and come back for one last look. For the concrete effect, I start by stippling on some Mecha Color medium gray. Then I stipple on some Mecha Colors light gray. Then I simply repeat the process until I get the desired effect. Next, I coat the entire base in a healthy coat of Vallejo's black wash. touch up the details on the side, I dry brush some model color white mixed with black. And finally, to finish off the base, I paint the underneath pure black before applying a decal with my channel's logo. Man, oh man, Baxter is finally done, and I gotta say, I'm really happy to be finished with this TMNT series. Now, don't get me wrong, I've had an absolute blast sculpting, printing, and painting these guys up, but I'm ready to move on to other projects, and believe me, I have several. Now, I did learn a lot on this project, and I'm really happy with the results, even if some things didn't turn out quite like I had intended. I'm still really excited with how this guy looks. Now, I'm sorry I can't do a group shot. I took the other figures to the office, which is where this guy is going to go, but maybe I'll post some pics of all of them together on my desk, just so you all can see how they look together. Now, if you want to print and paint your own Baxter figure, I posted a link to the files in the description below. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If so, please hit like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram for project posts. And until next time, take care, everyone.